if your partner also has some kind of injury on their body. If we try to hug each other, if we try to move closer, ouch, right? You pressed on my hurt spot. You were trying to get close to me, but it hurt.
Welcome back to the Mindfulness Within Podcast, the space where we explore ways to connect with our true selves, heal, and cultivate inner peace. I'm your host, Gilbert Romero-Mewharter, and I'm really glad to have you here today. If this is your first time listening, welcome. This podcast is all about integrating mindfulness and internal family systems, or IFS, to help you live from a more grounded, compassionate center. In our last episode, we explored the sexual parts of our internal system, those that hold our desires, our longing for intimacy, and our need for pleasure. Today, we're expanding that conversation by looking at what happens when relationships shift, when the closeness fades, when connection feels hard, or when emotional intimacy begins to disappear. Whether it's a partner, a close friend, or even your relationship with yourself, at some point, we all feel that subtle or sudden shift. So the question becomes, what causes these intimacy shifts, and how can we help shift them back? That's what we're exploring today, with a special guest I can't wait to introduce. But first, let's pause, take a slow breath in, and exhale gently. Let your attention drop into your body as we begin. If this moment of insight resonates with you, take a second to like, subscribe, or share this episode with someone who may need more self-compassion today. Before we dive in, I want to introduce our guest, Dr. Dan Sneider, LCSW, Ed.D. He is the founder of the Intimacy Shift, a blueprint for moving from conflict to connection. Dan believes that relationships, deep, honest, and loving ones, are what give life meaning. In his practice, he works with individuals and couples who aren't satisfied with their surface level connection. They want something deeper, emotional safety, clarity, and real intimacy. Dan holds degrees in psychology, social work, and education, and brings a wealth of lived experience, from breakups and long backpacking trips to building a private practice while raising a family. He specializes in helping people rebuild trust, navigating relational tension, and open spaces for emotional depth. Even when anxiety, infidelity, family pressure, or work stress makes that connection feel impossible. Dan, I'm so honored to have you here today. Welcome to the Mindfulness Within Podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Gil, for having me. I'm looking forward to connecting with you and talking about some of our shared work together.
Thank you again for showing up. So tell us about why relationships sometimes just seem to shift.
Absolutely. So we've all likely been there. That relationships all start really hopeful and positive. There's a reason we entered into them in the first place, and over time, a lot of different things can happen, and especially after that first year, when some of the excitement and passion can fade, some of those demons can surface from our earlier relationships, and we can start playing out old patterns that get us into trouble. And over the years that I've been working with couples and in my own relationships, I've seen patterns develop that I really want to help people to resolve. because often the commitment is there, the desire to stay together. But because of these things that surface, there's damage done that's not able to be resolved. There's so much hurt and pain that couples can't find their way back to each other.
I I hear that, Dan, and like I have so many questions. I know you also use EFT. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So emotionally focused therapy, EFT, right? All of the acronyms for all of our work. I really love this model because the whole idea of it is in the name. When we can connect to our own emotions, to our partner's emotions, that's when we can really connect and we can get through the surface level tensions. The number of times that in my relationships or in the couples that I work with, we're talking about, who cooked, X number of times that month, who woke up early, who made a sacrifice, but the feelings underneath that often don't get connected to or shared. So EFT is this framework where, instead of arguing me versus you, keeping score, or really digging into the feelings underneath and being able to connect on that level, which is why I put together this model that I called the intimacy shift. Which is it's a action based framework. So a lot of times in therapy, the focus is on our feelings, right? Emotionally focused therapy. Okay, we're going to talk about our feelings. Yes, but there's a number of action steps and behaviors that individuals and couples can put into practice to work on this and make those kinds of shifts. And so, my background in EFT, I use in therapy. And then also, I have this program where I teach couples behavioral steps that they can put into place to really make a shift in the level of intimacy that they experience, both emotionally and physically.
Hmm. As you say, physically, a big part of accessing our parts is really noticing those parts and how they show up in our body. I'm wondering how this is also helpful in EFT and how the two might work together.
Yeah, wonderful question. There's a story, vignette that I like to share with people that I work with. If you imagine having a physical injury, right, a sprained wrist or, a pulled muscle, right, you can feel that in your body. And if your partner also has some kind of injury on their body, if we try to hug each other, if we try to move closer, ouch, right? You pressed on my hurt spot. You were trying to get close to me, but it hurt. And so it's resonated with me for years, that story, because our desire to connect and our hurt spots come into conflict in that way, which is so incredibly frustrating and crazy making, truly, and until we really get into our bodies and find where that hurt spot is, where that wiring is, it's not going to change. And we'll keep replaying those same patterns. So I, like you, want very much to help people find where in their body that stored hurt is, what part is in pain within us, so that we can connect to it and love that part and share that love with our partner.
In what you said, I'm almost picturing like EFT is almost like the starting point. It helps that part feels safe and calms it. And then it allows the part behind that, right, to come forward so that way we can work deeper.
Indeed. Yeah, creating that emotional safety within a couple. Because if I don't feel emotionally safe to share my experience, then we're not going to be able to let that part rise to the surface. So it's very much a parallel process. How can I develop my own understanding of my parts, of my feelings, and then also building that safety in the relationship to be able to share it and feel that that part can be safely held and looked at.
I'm wondering, Dan, there was something I heard yesterday and it resonated so well with me. Like, I just want to carry it with me. And one of the things it said was, don't hear what I didn't say. I'm wondering how that shows up in couples work.
I haven't heard that exact expression. I'm gonna borrow that, I think. I like that a lot. And it speaks to me about the way that our tone and our body language, our animal behavior, right? The way that that enters the room long before our words do. And I'm certainly as guilty of that as anybody else, that I can believe, right? Recovering perfectionist, I can believe that I said the exact right thing, but I didn't say it in a loving or a kind way, and I don't get points for being right. And so it is about how we say things and the way that we enter those spaces with intention and patience. So that's absolutely right on. And in the intimacy shift framework that I put together, the second step is a grounding step. So similar to how you start your podcast with that deep breath, which I loved. I hope all your listeners took that great deep breath with us, because I needed that. The second step in my framework is to do a grounding exercise together. And that does help so that we really can tune in and hear what each other is actually saying. We can turn down the volume on the noise of the day, our priorities, our pain, and be in that space together.
I love how you said it quiets everything. And I always say, yes, it kind of quiets all the parts that are fighting to take control of that control panel, and really helps us to see who's there based on what we observed in others, right? And then I hear you say, coming in with the EFT just really helps soothe those parts and those reactive parts, so we see what's really there. So I heard you say that that was step 2. Tell us about step 3.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So step three is probably the longest, multi-part step. But the main idea is that after we've found a good time to talk, step one, grounded, however we decided to do that, deep breath, putting our phones away. Then in step three, we can start to communicate with our words to each other why we're here, to work on our intimate connection. And in that third step, the most important thing I want the listeners to hear is using I language. Uh, and so oftentimes in our culture, it's very much you focused. I need you to do this. You never do that. You always, right? That all or nothing kind of statement, which maybe you've covered before on your podcast. But I really try to teach I language, how to resonate with what I'm feeling. So, maybe it's something like, I really love when we put our phones down and listen to music together. We haven't done that in years, maybe, you know. And that's an I feeling. It's not you're always on your phone and, we don't get to connect. It's sharing that feeling from an I place. I really enjoy this. I miss when this happens. And it could also be sharing a trigger or, a part that's risen to the surface, depending on where this couple is in their work together. It could be something deeper, sharing, I've been really triggered this week by something that happened. I wanted to share that with you because I know I've been feeling off, or I've had trouble sleeping, and I want to talk to you about that so that you can support me. That's a really vulnerable thing to share, and oftentimes it comes out as you statements because we're scared to be vulnerable in that place when we're struggling. So that third step is really this multi-layered how we share these vulnerable parts of ourselves.
As you were speaking, Dan, I was thinking exactly that, like how mindfulness kind of slows us down, and then where we can actually think and call forth that part and ask it to speak to us. So, as you were talking, is bringing to mind like a conversation I had in my own life of just saying, I feel disconnected when we're on our phones, when we both get home. And that really shifted the conversation from, you know, doing the huffing and puffing around of, why don't you get it? Like we've talked about this 15 times. But when I was able to mindfully be in that hard moment and just say, this is what I'm really feeling, this is what's behind, and all all the history that comes with that, it began to shift my relationship. And
Mm.
I think for both of us, learning new things that maybe we weren't aware were getting in the way of our relationship.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. And I like to say that so much of this is simple but not easy to practice. So being able to say that to your partner and noticing the change that it meant, that's terrific.
I'm wondering, Jen, so after you've been able to slow them down, give them a tool, what
Mhm.
happens next?
So sometimes we have to circle back to that second step if things get activated. So I always say it doesn't have to be a straight line. The model that EFT uses is like an infinity symbol where we can go around and around with a trigger at the center. And sometimes we do have to go back through that trigger point, and maybe we do need to take a break, go back to our grounding step. And that can often be a challenge for couples. But, you know, depending on how often we need to slow things down, come back to that grounding step, help each other regulate. If one person is more calm than the other, we can lean on the other person's groundedness. Um, and once we are able to really hear each other and those feelings, often there's so much that's released. You know, you can see it, like you mentioned, in the body. The shoulders, they come down. The tone of voice changes. It's really my favorite thing in sessions when I see couples who have been looking at me maybe on the screen, they turn towards each other and they look at each other for the first time in a session, or they put their hand on the other person's shoulder. Sometimes I'll need to remind them, hey, I know we're in a session, but you can go ahead and put your hand on your partner's shoulder. And sometimes they do that all on their own once there's that release, and you can feel the shift. It's truly amazing to be a part of.
What I was really thinking about as you were talking about having to go back. It reminds me of IFS when we're looking what's behind one of the parts and noticing a protector stepping in and being like, nope, you ain't getting past here. And it's kind of blended with that person at that moment. So having to go back and say, I think that another part has shown up. Let's take a look at this. And then yes, as we're able to identify that part, their body relaxing. And then sometimes what I see in clients is just sometimes I don't know if this happens for you, Dan. It's almost like a disappointment about having to go back through it the first couple times, because for many people, learning to lean in to difficult feelings is really hard.
Mhm.
What do you think's behind that?
Oh, we are speaking the same language, certainly. There is a focus on, well, we want to solve whatever the issue is. We spent an hour talking about our feelings or coming back to that grounded place, but we didn't decide, you know, why I do more grocery shopping than you do, right? And it often will take more than one session. I do really try to get to that, resolving that surface level issue. But I really lean on the process, right? That old idea of giving a person a fish, they eat for a day, teaching a person to fish, then they're set. I really try to lean on that process. If we can get to a place where we know how to set up space where we can safely share our feelings, I can hear yours, you can hear mine. We don't have to agree with each other, but if we can do that safely and from a compassionate place, we're so much better off. And often if we get that process dialed in, the solution becomes a little bit irrelevant because we're not keeping score at that point. It's less about who did more of what and more of an understanding that, okay, I see where you're coming from, what parts were stirred up or you were blended with. And now I have more compassion for why this week felt the way that it did. Um, so it's a mix. It's a mix of going through that process mindset rather than a solution mindset. Um, and that's where long-term change really happens.
It kind of reminds me of the 8 C's, right? Like learning to be more curious and compassionate while still being calm and clear. But of course, it takes courage and confidence, and then that connectedness, not only with themselves, but also with each other. So Dan, we know that when couples are fighting, unfortunately, sometimes, in many cases, there's a child involved. And I'm wondering if you might talk about, from the child perspective, how those really hard moments, those moments where we've decided we can no longer be together, what, what does that look like?
Well, I can share from personal and from professional experience because that's a feature of my life. My parents separated and divorced when I was early teens, and I've been through a divorce myself. And the two experiences I'm very pleased to say were quite different. And, actually, both my partner, my former partner, my co-parent now, she had also been through a divorce when she was a child. And early in our relationship, when things, were really healthy and we had great hopes for the kind of family we would build, we talked about if things did not work out, how we would want that to look for our children. And I am very pleased to say that for the most part, we've really embodied that. And, children are really just young adults. Adults are really just big children. And, treating them with the level of development that they're at, we don't want to hide things from children, just like we don't want to hide things from adults. We need to be very direct about what is happening or shifting because even if they don't have the language for it, they can feel that. We talked about how our bodies respond to things. Parents will sometimes have a hard time connecting. Why is my child struggling to listen or not sleeping well or we're having power struggles about getting ready or food at the same time as there's a lot of conflict in the home and maybe the two parents aren't spending loving time with each other in front of the kids. So I'm a very big advocate for making sure that children are part of these conversations. It's absolutely okay to tell children, you know, if it's a mom and dad or just a partner, me and your other parent, we're struggling a little bit right now, but we love each other and we're working on it, whatever the case may be. But we want that child to know that they are safe with whatever is going to happen next, that they're not the cause of it, that their life will continue in, loving relationships with both parents. Um, there's so many different situations, so I'm trying to give a more general response, but the key parts are really being direct and emotionally attuned to that child because they can feel it even if they don't know exactly what's happening.
Thank you for sharing that personal journey. It's reminding me of when we go through the healing steps and we talk about being there with that part of us in that situation where it was formed and letting and being there with it in a way that it needed someone to be there with it. And I was thinking how beautiful you do this work to allow parents to be there for this child in a way that they need them to show up. I, I know just from my own practice how difficult sometimes it may be for co-parenting and navigating that water. I'm wondering if you might share some hope for parents or therapists who are counseling couples. Kind of like, what are some techniques that might be helpful for them to know?
Oh, I'm so happy to share some of these ideas, which again can sound simple, even though they are not easy. I'm a reader. There's a number of really good books on the subject. So, if you're not already in therapy, if you haven't already gotten some good books on co-parenting, you want to start with doing that work on yourself. And again, that blend between IFS and EFT. If I show up in a relationship not having done my own work, there's going to be challenge. Absolutely. So you want to make sure that you are working on yourself so that you can show up in that co-parenting relationship, which is still very much a relationship. If you are trying to co-parent well, you're in the same city, there's shared custody, you're going to be at events together. You are going to have maybe shared, community events. And the relationship does not stop. So doing your own work on yourself is critical. And then really, again, doing that work so that you can make it more about the kids if we're co-parenting together, that whatever the other co-parent is doing or not doing, you know, you want to make sure that you are showing up for that kid, that they are feeling safe and loved, and that you can hold them, with whatever feelings that they are having. And we are, never trying to put our frustrations or our disappointments about, the other parent on our child. As the adult, it's your job to be a source of safety.
Uh, Dan, I know you have come up with some great resources, and I'm wondering if you might share where people might go to find those items.
Yeah. Well, so some resources that I've created, can be found on my website, theintimacyshift.com. And so anyone who goes to that link is going to enter their email and get a free PDF that has 6 steps to unlocking intimate conversations with their partner, some of which I've talked through today. So again, really wanting there to be actionable steps, as quickly as possible, things that we can try that will not make things worse. They are not going to upset, a already tenuous situation. But they're going to have some skills and some ideas to follow. So that's where I would direct people first and foremost.
Thank you, Dan, so much. We have a little bit of time. Is there any one of the other steps you would like to talk more about today?
Yeah, well, I'd love to. So just like the beginning transition, so important, creating that safe environment. At the end of whatever kind of conversation we've had or opened that's gone deep into our feelings, we want to very mindfully close that conversation and transition out. So much of life is these transition moments in and out. And if we too abruptly leave to the next thing, we're gonna miss out on a really juicy connection. And so that closing ritual to these conversations is often overlooked in our busy lives. And so that's the last step of my framework that's modeled closely on emotionally focused therapy. That idea that when we've gone on that journey together, we're going to, land the plane. We're going to mindfully close with some sort of connection. It could be just taking some deep breaths together. It could be listening to a song. Again, getting back into our bodies. I'm really big on having snacks. Let's have a snack together. We don't want to talk on an empty stomach. So maybe we've had snacks during the conversation, but we could share a quick snack when we finish. But just taking that few minutes at the end to really lock in, okay, this was hard, but we did it together. We feel better. And now we can, separate to whatever it was that we needed to get to next.
I love ending with that because I think so often sometimes we close a conversation without closing conversation. and we wind up eating our feelings, so to speak. And I love the idea of like eating together, because when we've had something hard and we've been able to talk about, that meal feels more like a time for connection, not just another space where we're disconnected. So, speaking of routines, Dan, here at the Mindfulness Within podcast, we always like to do a mindful practice. And I'm wondering if you might lead one of the two that we do today. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. I would be happy to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to start off. And so let's start with something that happens to all of us. Relational shifts. Maybe you used to feel really close to someone, and now things feel distant. Conversations are harder. Eye contact disappears. You feel guarded or misunderstood. I don't know what I did with the rest of my... Okay, I read the wrong one. Oh, I was like, there's something wrong here. Okay, yeah, I found the right one. Okay, let's try this again. Now let's explore how to mindfully shift back toward connection by pausing, listening, and letting ourselves lead. We'll do 2 practices, one for real-time awareness and one for post-conflict repair. The first exercise is the intimacy check-in. This practice is for when you feel yourself pulling away. Let's try it now. Take a breath in and gently exhale. Bring someone to mind where you felt a shift. Ask yourself, what part of me is showing up in this distance? Is it the defender, the pleaser, the ghost? Ask the part, what are you afraid would happen if I got close again? Just listen. No fixing. Just analyzing. Now say to the part, thank you for protecting me. I see you. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Take one more breath. And come back to this moment. Notice how just a moment of gentle curiosity can shift your experience. Remember, every pause is an invitation to meet yourself with kindness. If this practice resonated, share it with someone who could use a little calm today. Dan, would you please lead us in our second exercise?
Yes. This one's for after the moment of disconnection. When you want to reconnect, but aren't sure how. Let's begin. bring to mind a recent conflict. Not too big, just real. Rewind it gently in your mind. Ask yourself, what part of me was speaking or reacting? Ask that part, what were you afraid of? And then offer this. Thank you for trying to help. I see how hard you are working. I'm here now, and I can hold this. Take a breath. Place a gentle hand on your chest if you'd like, and say to yourself, it's okay to feel. I am learning to lead with compassion. Thank yourself for showing up and listening to your parts with compassion. Healing happens in these small, brave moments of understanding. When you're ready, take this sense of connection with you and feel free to share this practice with a friend who might need it.
Thank you so much for being here today, Dan. That was really a special moment.
Yeah, for me too, Gil. Thank you very much.
Well, as we close today, I want you to remember, closeness is not a one-time achievement. It's a daily act of courage. And when intimacy shifts, it doesn't mean something's wrong. It means a part of you is asking to be seen and held. This week, try one of these. Use the intimacy check-in when you feel yourself pulling away. Use post-conflict resolution to move toward reconnection. Or simply ask, can I offer presence to the part that's afraid? If today's episode stirs something in you, know that you're not alone. You can reach out for support. To work with me, visit my Psychology Today profile. I'd be honored to work with you. To connect with Dr. Dan Sneider, visit theintimacyshift.com. His work with couples and individuals offers deep, heartfelt healing in the face of relational strain. If today's episode spoke to you, subscribe, share it with someone who needs support in their relationship, leave a review. It helps us reach more people.